You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
All set for your flight?
Yep, I've got everything I need. Eye mask, neck pillow, T-Mobile, headphones.
Wait, T-Mobile?
You bet. Free in-flight Wi-Fi. 15% off all Hilton brands. I never go anywhere without T-Mobile. Same goes from a water bottle, chewing gum, nail clippers,
okay,
passport.
I'm gonna leave you to it.
Find out how you can experience travel better at T-Mobile.com/travel.
Qualifying plan required. Wi-Fi were available on select U.S. airlines. Deposit and Hilton Honors membership required for 15% discount. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. If you love old movies, Hollywood history, or the golden age of filmmaking, you've come to the right place. This is the podcast that talks about amazing stories of Tinseltown from another era and fascinating conversations with writer-producer Steve Cubine and actress-writer Nan McNamara.
So, Steve, did Ava Gardner and Howard Hughes have a good relationship?
Well, they did until he dislocated her jaw.
What?
Well, don't worry. She hit him back with an ashtray.
From Beneath the Hollywood Sign is the gin joint for you.
Hey everybody, welcome to Triviality. This is episode 1 of Triviality Behind the Trivia.
Yeah, Behind the Trivia.
It's kind of our own version of VH1's Behind the Music. What we'd like to do is bring you guys information straight from the well, so to speak, bringing in actors, perhaps athletes, musicians, people who have trivia about them that want to share it with the world and tell some stories and then maybe ask some questions. So, Neil, why don't you introduce our guest today?
Yeah, so special thank you to our friend Justin Shady, a listener and a great collaborator of mine. He is good friends with an actor that you've seen countless times, we're sure. His name is Mark Metcalf. You might know him as the maestro on Seinfeld, the master on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or his turns in Animal House as Niedermeyer. And many, many other films. And he was gracious enough to give us some time today. And we're going to see how much he knows about the characters that he played.
Yeah, so let's go straight to that conversation.
Recorded in Chicago, Illinois, with your hosts, Ken, Matt, Neil, and Jeff. This is Triviality. The cream of the crop!
All right, well, we have a very special guest with us today. His name is Mark Metcalf. He's an actor you've seen in many, many projects with a career spanning TV, film, theater, and everything in between. You might know him as the maestro on Seinfeld, the master from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and from films Animal House, One Crazy Summer, and many, many more. We'd like to welcome Mark on the show. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for the welcome.
Oh, of course.
And the warm introduction.
Well, we need some warmth over here in Chicago. It's pretty cold. Actually, today's not too bad, but
yeah, our winter's been unseasonably warm.
It's nice down here where I am.
Yeah, it's not too bad. We're excited that it's not snowing and slushy. We're excited to have you on the show. We're all fans of your work. You've done so much across your career as far as television. You've been in many, many, many episodes of television and movies. And what we thought would be fun is to not only talk to you about your career and interview you about some of your favorite moments, but then in between sprinkle some trivia for our listeners and see how well you know your own roles that you were performing and see if you know those questions.
Yeah, in a way we'd like to go straight to the well for the wealth of trivia information for our listeners, and then, throw some questions at you too.
Well, my well may be dry because I tend to forget what I did as soon as I'm on to the next thing. But we'll see. I've been on the road doing Animal House stuff for this year because it's the 40th anniversary.
Wonderful.
Or last year. And so I've answered a lot of questions about Animal House and heard a lot of stories. But the fans tend to know more than I do, especially about stuff like Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Well, yeah, that's a very, very dedicated fan base for that show. Since you're traveling for Animal House, we don't have to ask too many questions of that since you've been dealing with it this last year. But why don't you just, I guess, off the top of your head, maybe just an anecdote about Animal House, maybe something that a lot of people don't know or something you'd like to share about the filming process.
Oh, that's the thing. When I started telling an Animal House story, I realized I've probably told this story 40 times in the last year for an interview or for a Q&A or something. So I think everybody knows all of them. I don't know if there's one that nobody's ever heard before. The most popular one is a story about Animal House. Is when people always say, "How did you get cast?" And I auditioned like everybody else, although I didn't actually audition. I was called in to interview and audition for the part of Otter, the Tim Matheson part, the guy who gets all the girls. And I'd read the script, so I thought, this will be fun. I get all the girls. I go in, I walk in the room. John Landis is in there. Michael Chinich, who was the casting director on it, was in there. And Landis looks at me. As soon as I got in the door, he looks at me and he says, "Do you know how to ride?" And I knew what he was talking about because I'd read the script, so I knew he was talking about the character Niedermeyer. And I said, without missing a beat, "Of course I know how to ride. I was practically born on a horse. My mother's water broke when we were out on a trail ride, or she and my dad were out on a trail ride out on a ranch in Montana, and she slid off the horse. My dad delivered me in the shade of the horse. He delivered calves, so he just delivered me, just the same thing. And then we got back on the horse and rode back in." And Landis looked at me and said, "Yeah, right." And I told him 5 more lies about how I knew how to ride. and he sent me home, and the next day or 2 days later he called me and said, "I want you to do this part." And I said, "Great, John. Can you see if you can get some money from Universal so I can learn how to ride?"
It's funny. I had an interview just like that the other day.
That's one of Ken's 5 lies. For today.
Right.
Well, one of the things I know about Animal House from your interviews and just from history as a filmmaker myself is that film, you guys didn't have a lot of time, you didn't have a lot of money, so you were doing limited takes. I think you might have said maybe 1 to 4 takes per setup. But what was it like doing that film at a young age and doing that film coming from the film Julia that you appeared in with Vanessa Redgrave and shot by Douglas Slocum, sort of an Oscar-winning film?
Right, yeah. It was, well, how was it? It was, how was it? I'm trying to think of how it was different. It was different because the story was different, the cast was different. I had more to do in Animal House, obviously, than I had to do in Julia. However, shooting in England with a European crew, a British crew, Fred Zinnemann as a director, they have a much more civilized way of going about things. You actually break for tea at 11 o'clock in the morning and a little snack, and then you break for lunch, and then you break for afternoon tea, and then you're done and at dinner by 6 o'clock. I mean, it's a much shorter day. You tend to work a long, hard day in American filmmaking, and we did long days. I don't think we did any 18-hour days on Animal House. We did some long days. On Buffy the Vampire Slayer television, I did a couple of 22-hour days.
Wow!
Because I was sitting in the chair getting makeup for 5 hours put on, and then an hour and a half to get it off. So that made my day longer than everybody else's. But 22 hours is a long time to sort of be up and focused and working. So Julia was, and it's work with Fonda is and Redgrave. I didn't work one-on-one with Redgrave. I did one-on-one scene with Fonda. I'm not in the film anymore. I got cut out of it. It was about 10 days before they opened. Zinnemann called me and said we had to cut your scene. I had one scene with Fonda, and we had to cut your scene because they insist we cut 20 minutes out of the film. So we cut your scene and we cut half of Meryl Streep's scenes. And so she's still in it, but vaguely, but I'm not in it at all. I think I'm referred to once. But so it was, I don't know, it was a transition. Animal House was a great shoot because it was all people working at the same level. There were no movie stars. Everybody was just a journeyman actor. Even Belushi was not a big star yet. He'd done 1 season, I think, or 2 seasons of Saturday Night Live. Matheson had done some television shows, but he was in over his head because he was doing comedy for the first time, and he knew it, and he wanted to do that, and he wanted to stretch himself. So we were all working at the same level, and Landis made it very clear that there were no stars, and he fought Universal. They wanted to put some movie stars in it or television stars in it because they hated the script, and they just wanted to pack it. They thought the only way this thing is going to make any money is if we put a bunch of stars in it, and they wanted to do a Saturday Night Live picture, so they wanted Danny Aykroyd to play D-Day. They wanted Chevy to play Otter. They wanted all kinds of, and Landis fought against that because he really wanted people working at the same level, and that was different than Julia, because you had Robards, you had Redgrave, you had Fonda, you had a lot of movie stars and movie stars aren't as bad as sometimes I make them sound like. I've worked with Tom Arnold, and he makes it about as bad as it possibly can be.
Well, so his work ethic matched the name of the movie, I suppose, that you appeared in with him.
Yeah, I don't think ethic belongs in that sentence at all.
Well, I understand a lot of the driving force behind Animal House actually getting made is due to Donald Sutherland's star power at the time, and his ass, I suppose, per The Simpsons.
Yeah, I mean that's they kept insisting that he put somebody in there. So Landis finally called Donald because he knew him from I think Dirty Dozen. Landis had worked as a stuntman and just general gopher on Dirty Dozen, which I think they shot in Romania or something like that. And gotten to know Sutherland and became friends with him. And Sutherland was doing Invasion of the Body Snatchers in San Francisco with Brooke Adams. And Landis said, "I got to have that star. They're going to cut me off if somebody doesn't come and be in this movie. Who's a movie star? You're a movie star. Could you come do 2 days? We'll fly you up here. You can shoot Friday afternoon. You can shoot Saturday. We'll have you back home on Sunday, so you can go back to work on what did they say? Invasion of the Body Snatchers." So he came up, and they gave him a choice of making, I think, like $10,000 a day, or $5,000. I don't remember exactly what the numbers were. But they quoted him a price: $10,000 a day, or you can work for scale and have a piece of the movie, a percentage of the movie. And Sutherland read the script, and he said, "I'll take the cash up front." And now he kicks himself because apparently somebody did the numbers once. He would have made something like $8 million if he'd taken a percentage of it. As opposed to making $20,000 for working 2 days.
Yeah, I'm sure Robert Downey Jr. never regrets taking the percentage on the Marvel movies.
Yeah, yes. Landis always says the two highest paid creatures in the movie were Sutherland and my horse, the horse I rode, which was paid more than I was.
Well, on that movie, you got to interact a little bit with Karen Allen. That was her first movie. What was that experience like? Because she ended up, being just a great star, Marion Ravenwood and other film starman.
Yeah, I rode out on a plane with Karen from New York. She was in Washington, D.C., but she came up to New York, and we took a plane together, red eye, I think, out. And so we got to Eugene in the morning, and or mid-morning. And by the time I got there, I was totally in love with her because she's just so beautiful and such a great clean head on her. And so yeah, she was great to work with. And still is. I've done these reunions, these mini reunions. She's done a number of them. She arranged for a bunch of us to come up to Pittsfield, Massachusetts, where she lives and knits. She has a company that she uses Japanese looms and makes really beautiful scarves and sweaters and things, really beautiful, intricate designs. And she runs that company, does the design, and does most of the looming herself. And she had us up there for the Berkshire Film Festival or something like that. Karen's great. I can't tell you any dirty stories about her.
No, that's okay.
I wish I could, but I wouldn't even.
Well, I guess we'll throw a little trivia question in here because this one our listeners might appreciate. So Doug Niedermeyer in Animal House was in the ROTC, and it's kind of a two-part question. I'm sure you remember what his rank was.
Sergeant at Arms.
Sergeant at Arms. And we looked it up. Do you know what sergeant is, or sergeant is derived from a Latin word meaning what?
That's a tough one,
Neil.
No
idea.
It is a tough one.
I took Latin in high school. I should know, shouldn't I? I don't know. What is it?
Apparently it's servant.
Servant. Well, that's Niedermeyer all over again. He's a servant of the people. I'm only here to teach and serve. No kidding. That's okay. Good. That's what it is. You know what his middle initial is? C. He's Douglas C. Niedermeyer, Sergeant at Arms. Do you know what the C stands for?
I was actually going to ask you because I don't know. What is it?
Clark.
Ooh.
I picked it because of there was a general in the World War II, I think, Douglas Clark, with a E on the end, C-L-A-R-K-E. I think it is. I can't remember, but that's what it did.
Well, speaking of Niedermeyer's rank, it seems he got a promotion in another film where you kind of played the same character. Can you tell us about that?
In The Stupids, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Is that what you're referring to?
Exactly.
Yeah. In fact, I do. We even he's called the Colonel in the script, but Landis and I again talked about it because when I did the Twisted Sister videos, which clearly revitalizes the character, brings the character back to life, I got letters from Universal saying, you can't do that. We own that character. You don't own that character. If you do it again, we'll sue you. Now, a couple of weeks after I got that first letter, Twisted Sister Dee Snider called me and said, we want to do another video. Can you do it? And I said, sure, let's go. So I just ignored what Universal said. But so Landis and I talked about that, and I said, this guy, he's so much like Niedermeyer, and people are not going to look at me doing it and not think of Niedermeyer. So let's just call him Niedermeyer. So my name tag in The Stupids, if you've ever seen it, and if you haven't, you should, because it's really very funny. Anyway, so we named him Niedermeyer. We put the name tag on him for Niedermeyer, and Universal didn't say anything. I think probably because nobody saw The Stupids, whereas everybody saw the Twisted Sister videos probably hundreds of times, because it played every 5 minutes on MTV back in the days when there was such a thing as MTV.
Was Dee Snider just a big fan of yours? Is that how you got involved with that, or is it an audition, or how did that work?
No, he was a big fan. The band loved the movie, and they loved the character. They used to quote the character all the time they were a bar band up and down the Hudson River and all over Long Island. They quoted him, so when Atlantic Records gave them some money to make a video, they said, let's get Niedermeyer. He's a sneaky little like you, just like us. And so they called me up and got me. I didn't know. I didn't have it. I had a black and white TV that barely worked. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what MTV was. I didn't know what Twisted Sister was as a band. I didn't know what headbanger rock and roll is. And when Beethoven died, I stopped listening to popular music. And so I didn't know anything about that. But they said, we'll fly you out to L.A. to shoot this thing. We can't pay you much. And I said, can you pay me at least SAG wages, day wages? And they said, yeah, but we can't be SAG. So I did it outside the union, for which I also got in trouble. But the union couldn't have done it anyway because they didn't have a contract at that time for music videos. Now they do. They threatened to throw me out of the union for doing the video too. I brought him back to life, and being an actor, I built this whole backstory because it says he's killed in Vietnam by his own troops, and then Landis in the Twilight Zone movie, there's a overhead shot of some soldiers going through the jungle. He shot it was, I don't know if you remember the Twilight Zone movie, but I think it was 3 different episodes of Twilight Zone. One shot by Landis took place in Vietnam. One shot, I can't remember that really great.
Spielberg did one, and Spielberg did one with the old folks' home, and then they also had the one on the plane with John Lithgow.
Yeah, the one on the plane with John Lithgow. That's the one I remember. Did Spielberg direct that one? I know he produced it. I don't know that he directed the other one.
He did the it was I think it was called Kick the Can. Had Catman Scruthers in it, I believe. The John Lithgow one was the director of Mad Max.
George
Miller.
Whose name I
George
can't
Miller.
remember right now. Australian guy.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that one.
Anyway, in Landis's version, he has one of the soldiers say we should never have killed Niedermeyer. So I decided that Niedermeyer didn't actually die when they threw the grenade into his tent. He swam upriver and lived with Kurtz from Apocalypse Now in Cambodia for several years until that all blew up.
The horror.
At the end of Apocalypse Now. And then he built himself a raft, paddled back across the Pacific, and sailed across the Pacific because he had so many skills that he'd learned from Brando in the jungle, and re-enlisted in the army and became a colonel. And that's how he ended up in the Stupids. So that's
maybe
so many years
maybe he played a couple rounds of Russian roulette with Chris Walken as well.
That's right. And I did. I went to Walken. I was his. I held his water for him while he was at the table, and occasionally would sit in for him. Yeah.
What's funny about you mentioning, I was actually going to ask what Niedermeyer's demise was according to Animal House about being killed by his own troops, but just a fun little thing here. There's two other characters you did early on. I'm just curious to see if you remember how they died. You were on Hill Street Blues for a short period of time, played sort of a slimy officer there. Do you remember how you were murdered on that show?
Yeah, I had my throat cut by a hooker trying to get a freebie in the back of the van. I was busting her in the van and I was trying to get a freebie, and she cut my throat.
That's right. And then another one.
What a way to go out.
I mean, as they say, there are no free lunches. So.
Well, if I'd only been in the saddle when she cut my throat, that would have been one thing. That would have been not a bad way to go out, but I don't think I was, as they say, in the saddle the way John Garfield was when he died.
Well, speaking of being in the saddle, I believe you died in the saddle in The Final Terror.
Oh, yes, that's the movie in which I had my genitalia separated from my body at the moment of orgasm with Cindy Harrell on a cold, pebbly beach next to a creek in the redwood forest up around Crescent City, California. I remember more than I think. You guys are hitting on some of the highlights. So. Because having your genitalia separated from your body in the moment of orgasm is not something you forget easily.
I haven't seen that movie, but I'm gonna now.
Well, it had young Daryl Hannah in it.
You should see it. I swear you can see the genitalia flying through the air when Joe Pantoliano comes out of the woods.
Joey
with his
Pants
axe
is in it?
attached to his arm. And hacks me up the middle while I'm...
What's great about...
Not literally, because we were acting.
Right.
Well, that was directed by Andrew Davis, right, who did The Fugitive?
Andy Davis, who did The Fugitive, yeah, and a couple other. He did the first and the only good Steven Seagal movie, the one on the ship with Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh, Under Siege, yeah.
Under Siege, you're right, exactly, yeah. Great cast. Daryl Hannah.
Yep.
Is in it, and I just saw a woman. I just watched last night, Tears of the Sun. I'd seen it before with Bruce Willis. It's not a bad movie, but not a good movie either. But Willis does more interesting work. But anyway, a woman named Akusia Busio, who was a princess from some African country, was also in Final Terror, and she's in Tears of the Sun. Rachel Ward, John Friedrich, Joey Pants. It was a good cast.
Yeah, you had a lot of young talent there who did a great job.
And Joe Roth, who went on to run Disney for a while, was the producer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he and his wife, what's her name? Arkoff. I can't remember her name. Diane. I can't remember. Who was the daughter of Samuel Arkoff, who was the king of slasher movies. They produced it. And when I had my genitalia separated from my body at the moment of orgasm, a sentence that I obviously love to say. She was the one, besides Andy and Cindy and myself, she was on set, and she was charged with mopping up the blood from between my legs when we had to redo a retake. Because Joe would come out with this axe attached to his arm, and it was rigged so blood would come out of it, so you could get it all in one, him hacking me, and blood would show up, and so when we had to do a retake, she would, I can't remember her name.
Well, that's the beauty of independent movies. Have a little more fun.
That's a movie I haven't seen, but like I said, I'm going to get right on that because that sounds like a blast.
There's a new recently released Blu-ray version of it, which I haven't seen either. It's a good story about that movie because they took it away, basically. Joe took it away from Andy Davis because his father-in-law said you've got to have blood in the first 10 minutes of any movie like this. And Andy didn't. He was sort of making a slasher movie, but not making it purely by the formula. He was really more interested in character. And if you look at it, the way it was cast and the way it's played, the characters really are what it's about. But the producers said you got to have blood, so they took Andy off of it, and Joe shot this scene with a biker and his girlfriend in the same forest sometime before, and they both get killed bloodily, and no explanation for it. They're just biking on a motorcycle through the forest, and they get killed. And then they reshot. No, they didn't reshoot anything. They reshot that, and then they re-edited. We went in to do looping ADR, and we would say lines that weren't in the script at all. And they had cut it so that we said them when the camera was at our backs rather than seeing our mouths. It changed the plot microscopically, but something they thought they had to do. Andy's name is still on it, but Joe Roth had a lot to do with that. But anyway, I'm curious. I haven't seen the new Blu-ray. I want to see it again. I haven't seen it for a long time.
Yeah, we'll scoop that one up.
Yeah,
I think
we'll have to.
Yeah.
But what I have seen is your turn as the maestro in Seinfeld, which is arguably one of your more prevalent roles. How did that come about?
Audition, just like everybody, like 500 or 1,000 other actors in L.A. did at the time for that part, because everybody wanted to be on Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And I went in. I can't think. The first audition was on a Wednesday, and they called me back on Friday to do it again. And I figured by the end of the day, Friday, I'd hear yes or no, and I didn't hear anything. So I figured if you don't hear anything, that's a no. So I went on about my business, and then Saturday, I think it was, I got a call from my agent saying they want to see you again on Sunday, and they start working on this thing on Monday. And can you go in? So I drove in. I was living up in Port Hueneme, which is sort of where the Navy Seabee base is, up in just up 55 miles north of L.A. I was living up there at the time because it was just prettier. And so I drove in on Sunday and auditioned once again for Larry and Jerry and all the writers, and then came home. And then later Sunday night they called me and said, "Can you be here tomorrow morning at 10 to shoot it?" So, I mean, I auditioned just like everybody else, but there were probably, I don't know, 500 or 100 or 2,000 people auditioned to begin with, and they whittled it down. And I was real lucky and happy to get it because it's a great show, and it's great working with millionaires.
That's right.
Yeah.
And were you surprised? Were you surprised by kind of the legacy of that character, or by the time you were on it, you kind of knew, that these characters kind of take on a life of their own a little bit?
Well, I didn't watch the show that much because I didn't really watch that much TV, so I was aware of it, and I was aware of how popular it was. I did not think. I mean, people stopped me and recognized me from it, and they asked me about it, and they're surprised that it was only 2 episodes because they think so. The character did make a strong impact, and I don't think I realized that at the time. Some of the writers came up to me and said, "This is one of our favorite characters that we've ever written," and they were in the 7th season, so they'd worked on a lot of characters. So I knew that they thought it was good, and I wanted to do it justice, but basically I just played it. I wasn't thinking ahead a lot. And people always say, "Did you know when you made Animal House that it would be become an iconic movie, be in the American Film Institute's 100 Best Movies, be in the Library of Congress as a movie that represents America at its best?" The movie's everywhere, and people always ask me whether or not I thought. No, of course not. Nobody knew. You don't work that way. You don't work thinking, "Oh, there are people that are going to be talking about this 40 years from now." You just do the job.
Do the work, yeah.
Well, one person who's certainly still talking about the maestro is one of our listeners, Matt Coleman, who was he the winner of that Seinfeld?
He was Yes, he was. Yeah, he's a huge Seinfeld fan.
He actually provided a few Seinfeld trivia questions regarding your character. If you can humor us for a moment, and I can ask these from Matt.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So his first question is: Bob Cobb adopted the moniker of Maestro after observing
Don't
which.
like it when you say that name. Sorry, go ahead.
Which real life
I
conductor?
still have an automatic response to that. Go ahead. Sorry.
He adopted the moniker of the Maestro after observing which real life conductor being referred to as Maestro.
Leonard Bernstein.
Yeah, that's right.
Or Bernstein, depending on where you are.
All right. That's absolutely right. Second question
from. Good enough for Lenny. It should be good enough for me. I do remember more than I think I remember.
Oh, I think you're going to get a lot of these.
The second question Matt has here is: the Maestro owns a villa in Tuscany, an area which Jerry and Kramer discuss as being the size of which U.S. state, even though, for the record, Tuscany is roughly 1/7 the size in real life.
Oh, wow, you got me on that. They say it's the size of New York? I don't know. What do they say?
I believe they say it's the size of North Dakota.
North Dakota.
So not exactly correct.
Scary, wouldn't it? Right? That's, okay, good. Yeah, you got me. I didn't know that one. I forgot that.
And the third one here from Matt is, while he's referred to in the episode as the other guy, which was the Maestro's favorite of the three tenors?
Oh, you're going to get me on this one, too. Pavarotti,
Right, the other guy.
Yeah, the other guy. Oh, I don't know. I'm blanking.
His name is Jose Carreras.
Jose Carrera. Okay, and who is the third one? Domingue? Is it no?
Oh, you got me.
Yeah, the
Pavarotti, Carrera, and who?
I knew Carrera from the question in Pavarotti because of Pavarotti, but
I feel like he should get credit for the other guy. I mean, that was
the other guy.
Yeah, the other guy. It was Placido Domingo.
Oh yeah, Placido Domingo.
I knew it was Domingo. I thought it was Dominguez or Domingo. Okay, good.
I believe I knew Placido.
Placido.
Yeah.
All right, Matt asks, when Elaine attempts to give the Maestro an autograph...
Tell Matt, congratulations on getting me.
All right, we'll do that. The Maestro says, congrats, Matt.
I should send him a signed baton.
Oh, I'm sure he'd love that.
But I don't have any.
Those aren't cheap either, those conducting batons.
You know Larry Thomas, the guy, the soup Nazi?
Yeah.
He sends away to the internet and the all-powerful internet and gets ladles, and then he signs them "No soup for you" and sells them. He gets them for 25 cents a piece, and then sells them for $50 or something like that, for a lot of money.
Yeah,
he was doing that a few years ago. I don't know if he's still doing it or not.
Yeah, he was oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say he was a really nice guy. We were gonna do a movie when I was pretty young. I was 20 years old, and it was about a sort of the end of Blockbuster, and he was gonna be in the film. And we did a little fundraiser here in our small town, and he was signing soup cans and pictures here. So it just goes to show that some of these characters, on a TV series can, outlast what you believe they would.
It's amazing. It's amazing, and he's really made. I don't know how much he works as an actor, but he's really made a career out of being the soup Nazi, and that was one episode. So I mean, that says a lot about how great the writing was of that show.
Well, speaking of really good writing, just to transition here, Jeff is a huge fan of Joss Whedon, and we have a few questions here that our friend Jen Keep wrote about the Master, but. Why don't you just tell us, what was it like working with Joss? What was the set like? Was it
to our listeners? That's Buffy.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Joss is a genius. Obviously, I mean, I don't know. It maybe not be obvious to people who haven't seen his work, but I think he's a genius, and as a writer and as a producer, and so it was great working with him. There's a lot of Buffy stories that I won't bore you with, but. The set for me was pretty isolated, and I kind of wanted it that way because, as I said, it took 5.5 hours to put the makeup on. At the beginning of the season, by the end of the season, they had it down to 3.5 hours, but they would put the mask and the skull cap and the ears and the neck piece and the fingers on and the hands, and then they would paint it because when we started the season, they didn't know exactly what they wanted the colors to look like in his face. And so if you binge watch it from beginning to end, you'll see that what she calls my punch bowl mouth at the end sort of evolves. It's not there at the beginning, but it's there at the end. And so I was pretty isolated because I was inside this mask all the time, and it took a long time to get in it, and I used that time as a kind of a meditation to sort of get into not a trance-like state, but just sort of isolate myself. Like the master was pretty isolated in that church under Sunnydale or whatever the town is called. But Josh was very receptive. In the script, because I was in the very big first episode. Excuse me. In the script, he has the master with sort of long, stringy black hair. And I was a fan of the Murnau movie Nosferatu, and I brought him some pictures of Nosferatu, and I thought maybe, Josh, we could go sort of pick up some of the history of vampires in film and cinema, and maybe we could just do some echoes of Nosferatu instead of this long, stringy black hair that you've got. And he liked that idea, so the makeup, the way it looked, was a combination of his idea and my idea, and what we wanted to do. The leather costume was also a little bit out of Nosferatu, but
well, it's a classic vampire. You gotta reference that one.
One of the more frightening iterations of vampires too.
I think he's the first vampire ever filmed, and until the master, he was the oldest and meanest vampire. We made that. I always say the master is the oldest and meanest vampire because he's 800 years old, and I think Nosferatu is only 600 years old or something like that.
He's a youngster.
So,
yeah, he's still young.
Yeah, I deserve respect because I'm older.
And it's been widely noted that Neil always had that Sarah Michelle Gellar poster in his workout room, was it?
Yeah. So, Mark, you don't know this, but I often reference when I was younger, I had a workout room in our basement, and to try to get into shape, I had a poster of Sarah Michelle Gellar because I wanted to be Angel, even though I was very skinny and could not, gain any muscle mass. But I was a big fan of Sarah Michelle Gellar when I was younger.
Well, interviewing Mark could be the closest you ever get to meeting Sarah Michelle Gellar.
That's true.
Yeah, that's 1 degree. You got 1 degree of separation now, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's true.
Yeah, she's obviously. I mean, you're right. You were a smart kid to have a poster of her up on your workout room. Yeah, but she's great. She's great to work with. We really only had one long scene together in the last episode, and it was fun. She was very nice about it when we finished shooting.
Well, what's great about that character is that Joss wrote it, and just such a strong female character, and one who kicks ass, and throws funny quips at you when she does it, and I feel like changed a lot of TV after that.
Yeah. Oh, I think it did. I mean, I was just in London doing a convention you talked about earlier on about Buffy fans being a unique breed. I can't remember the phrase you used, but they are. I was at a convention in London called Star Fury, all about Buffy, and all Buffy fans. They do it once a year. I've been over there, I think, 3 times for Buffy for these guys, and over the 21 years, 22 years since I did it in '97, and this really tight-knit group of fans that come together at these conventions more for each other than they do for us. They're happy that we're there, but they get to see each other, and they come from all over Europe. From I think we had a woman from Romania, in fact, and Italy and Greece, and a couple from France. And the kind of really wonderful thing at this convention, anyway, was I would guess 50 to 60% represented the LGBTQ community, because there's this generosity of spirit that empowered this young woman in the film. It also goes a long way towards empowering lots of, as we say, marginalized groups of people and marginalized individuals, and just says yes to them rather than the no that society classically has said. And it's a big part of, of whatever evolution this country and this culture in this country is going through now, and more obvious. We're always going through it, but more obviously going through with the Me Too movement and Never Again, and just the way young people are speaking up. The kids from Parkland.
Yeah, absolutely. Joss has always been really great about that in his work, and But speaking of Joss's rabid fans, one of those is our good friend Jen Keep, and she wrote you some questions here.
She did.
Yeah, tragically for our sake, and we had to thank Jen for this. Ken and I, who are both Joss Whedon fans, have never actually seen Buffy. It's like my Joss Whedon shame. So
right.
How could I don't think I can keep talking to you.
That's fair.
Sorry, I have to go have root canal.
You'd rather have a root canal than continue this conversation?
That's what a lot of people say to Jeff when they're on the show, that they'd rather have a root canal than play trivia with him. So.
You'd rather have root canal? You guys aren't that bad. But I'm beginning to think, you've never seen Buffy. Well, all right. Well, leave it. Who's the woman that wrote the question?
It's a friend of ours, Jen Keep. So we've got a couple for you. First question from Jen, and I think this is a good one. So right from the get-go, who did the Master's Sire, appearing in the season 1 opener, and was an integral character in the Buffyverse as far as vampire relations?
Darla.
Mm-hmm.
Darla?
Yes.
Is that the answer?
Yeah, it is Darla.
Yeah, Darla.
Yeah,
I know. And believe me, and I like that as a verb. Julie Benz was also a whole lot of fun. Julie Benz is quite something.
Yeah, you guys had great chemistry.
Yeah. Yes, we did. Yeah, I sired her though. Didn't I sire her? When did I? Did I do her Did I do her on the show, or did I do her on Angel? Because in Angel, they brought me back after the first season. They brought me back for, I think, maybe 2 episodes of Angel, where I already had made Darla, and Darla makes Angel in the flashback episodes of Angel. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, you just answered one of our other trivia questions. Great job on that one. So you're beating us to the punch.
I'm a little bit more familiar with Julie Benz's other bloody work, which would be Dexter. So although she's not, But after biting Buffy's neck to fulfill the prophecy, the Master pays her what compliment before dropping her into the water?
Before or after? Oh, after I drop her in the water, I say, by the way, I like your dress. I think it's after I drop her in the water.
That was it?
Yeah, very smooth.
She's on her way to the prom. By the way, I like your dress. Do I compliment her beforehand? If I did, it would have been something about the skin on her neck.
No, you're right. It was, by the way, I like your dress. That was it.
By the way, I like your dress. Yeah, I think that was after I dropped her in the water, in the mud puddle. Presumably dead. When I was cast for the part and I went in to talk to Joss about it, just sort of a little conference to see. I wanted to, talk to him about that Nosferatu look, and I said, so what's the art? I knew I was going to do the whole season, but that was all. It wasn't a contract for the whole series. So I said, so what's the arc through this series, through this first season? And he said, oh, it's really great. At the end, you kill Buffy. And I said, oh, wow, that'll be fun. Does that mean if it gets picked up, the second season will be called Master the Buffy Slayer? And he laughed. But he never told me until I got the script that I killed Buffy, but then they do a little seance and they bring her back to life and she kills me. That was a surprise. I mean, I knew I had to die or go off because they hadn't approached me to do the next season yet. But
well, at least you didn't have to do that makeup for an entire season as the lead character then.
Well, and that's not the only time they've kind of pulled Joss Whedon, M. Night Shyamalan style 180. So in season 3, after A Wish Gone Wrong, the fate of the universe is altered, and the Master is now alive and has taken over Sunnydale. Which members of the gang are now vampires?
Allison Hannigan, whose name in the character name I can't remember, but I do remember
Willow.
Willow. Yeah, she plays Willow.
Willow. And is Xander, is he also a vampire?
Yes, Xander is the other one. So
Xander's the other one, yeah. Who I don't think I've seen Allison since then, but I've seen Xander, Nicholas, a couple of times because he's done he does these conventions in England. So I've seen him once or twice over there, and he's quite a funny guy and a nice guy. I like him.
Before we get to a few extra questions here and wrap up, one of the questions Jen wrote was actually to complete one of your lines, which it looks like you've done another one already. But it said in the episode "The Wish," the Masters created a factory for humans to be farmed for their blood. So the quote was, "Meanwhile, the humans with their plebeian minds have brought us a truly demonic concept." And what was that concept?
I can't remember. I don't remember. She's smarter than me.
It was mass production.
Oh, that of course, mass. That's because the whole thing is this sort of factory where they bring me a body, and they put the body on a conveyor belt, and it goes through this machine, and I pull a lever, and my wine glass fills with blood.
A little blood farm.
Production. Thank you, Henry Ford.
Well, we have a few miscellaneous questions here. I did want to mention, you have such a great career in the theater. Working with Mike Nichols in a great Streamers. Yep. Robert Altman did the film version of that, and I know you did some great work in Milwaukee with the First Stage Children's Theater. And in one production, you played the Giver in a stage adaptation. So, talking about the Giver story, do you remember what the first memory that the Giver gives to Jonas in the story is?
Oh, snow?
Yeah, snow and sledding.
Snow and a sleigh ride, right?
Yep.
Riding on a sled through snow.
Yep, that one's asked at trivia quite often about what that first memory was. So you got that one right on the money.
Good.
And then you also share
a great story. I really like that story.
Yeah, I think The Giver is great.
Yeah.
It was one of the few I read in junior high that really struck me and I liked.
Yeah.
I read that you're also a big Shakespeare fan, like some of us here, and Hamlet was a character you said you've always would love to play because you've played Claudius a few times.
I played Claudius twice. Yeah. I've done it 4 times. I did it with Chris Walken. I played Laertes with Chris Walken as Hamlet. I did Claudius with Mark Rylance as Hamlet. I did Marcellus and a couple other parts with Sam Waterston as Hamlet. And then I did Claudius again down in Houston with a young actor named Ben Reed just a couple of years ago.
So actually, out of those 4, there's some pretty big names there and up and coming with Ben Reed. But if you had to do a 2-man show version of Hamlet, who would you want to do it with all the characters?
Probably Mark Rylance, because he's such a good actor. And he could do all the hard ones, and I could do all the easy ones. I'd play Gertrude. I could play Gertrude. He could play my son. I could play the goat. Yeah, sure. I'd do it with Mark Rylance.
That's a good answer.
He's a phenomenal actor.
We love Mark Rylance here. Speaking of Hamlet, just a little trivia question we hear from time to time again. What character does Hamlet call a fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy?
Yorick.
Yorick is correct. That's right.
Yeah. When he's sitting in the grave with the gravedigger and reflecting on the skull of his friend. Where be your jibes now? Yeah, the guy who carried him. Yorick carried him on his shoulders when he was a young boy. Yeah.
And then just a few little questions here. Jeff, you had one about a TV show he did a 3-episode arc on.
Yeah. So yes, in preparation for the show, I was like, I should probably look up a couple other roles just so I'm a little bit better versed. The Animal House and the Maestro were the ones that I was familiar with. And so I saw you did a stint as, I believe, Captain Pike on JAG. And that begs the question, what the hell is JAG mean?
Judge Advocate General, I think.
Points.
Judge Advocate. I don't know what the G is.
That is what I found to be correct. I still don't know what that means.
But the words are correct.
It's the legal branch of the Navy. I don't know. I'm not sure they knew what it was. But I got, what I got to do on that show was so great. We shot parts of the first 2 episodes on the John C. Stennis, which is a nuclear aircraft carrier out of San Diego.
Oh, wow.
And they flew me down to San Diego, and then I flew on a Navy plane, and I can't remember what they call it, but it was a little, one of those planes, Navy planes. There's no stewardesses. There's no flight attendants. They don't serve you beer, and you're just strapped onto a hard wooden bench. I flew on one of those out of San Diego, at a little airport Navy airport in San Diego, onto the John C. Stennis, which was out at 60, 70 miles out at sea, over the horizon, and then lived on the aircraft carrier for 5 days while we shot parts of the first 2 episodes, I think.
Wow.
Which was a great experience. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever been on one of those aircraft carriers, but it's a real assault on the senses. I mean, especially when you're on deck with jet fuel in your nose all the time, and it's just loud, constantly loud. And they put us in the VIP quarters, which meant only that we had a little bit more room in our little cabin that we lived in, and a little bit is maybe a few more square inches. But we were higher up too, so it meant our rooms were or my room was anyway, right under the flight deck, and they were doing night ops, so they were taking off and landing every 5 minutes. And if you've ever seen the way they land on an aircraft carrier, there's this big, huge cable that's like 2-3 inches in diameter that catches the plane and stops it, and then releases it, so that cable gets whipped up off the deck and then gets dropped right on top of my head, it felt like, all night long. So I didn't get a lot of sleep when we was there, but it was fun.
Well, another TV show that you were on, which I'm curious to see if you remember this. I had watched it the other day. You played a character named Norval Hayes. You're kind of a villainous character who would sit in a van and try to kidnap children on Walker, Texas Ranger. Do you remember what tactic you used to try and kidnap kids off the street?
I wanted to play video games with them, if I recall correctly. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I don't know what did I offer them candy? It was
you had something other than candy that was alive, if that helps you out.
Oh, puppies? Did I have a puppy?
Yep, you had a box full of free puppies.
A box full of free puppies. That's right.
All right. Well, we got one last question for you here. You played Mr. Rope in the teen classic Drive Me Crazy in 1999. Between the two young stars of that film, I was wondering if you could name some of the other sitcoms or television shows that they appeared. I think they were stars of 3 shows put together. So
Sabrina the Teenage Witch for that other 3 named actress, Melissa Joan Hart.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Is that her name?
Yeah.
Oh, she did Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the first one, not the one that I haven't seen that people seem to be kind of excited about.
Right, the classic Sabrina.
Yeah. And did she also do somebody Explains It All?
Yeah, Clarissa Explains It All, actually. And she was the star
right.
of that
and
as
then,
well.
Adrian, the guy with sounds like he should be French, but he's not.
Grenier.
Who was in Entourage.
Yeah, that's right. He was the lead in Entourage.
What's Adrian's last name? Grenier.
Grenier, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And arguably should have been in the Aquaman movie based on his role in Entourage. But yeah, you got it exactly right.
I haven't seen Aquaman, but I wonder what Adrian's doing at home in his villa in the Hollywood Hills or wherever it is he lives off his Entourage money.
Yeah, he's been doing fine, I think.
Well, before we wrap it up here, two little things. One thing, there's a film of yours that I used to watch all the time when I was younger. I used to rent it on VHS from the video store every Tuesday. It was 99-cent rentals, and I'd bring it home and watch it. I actually just watched it last night. I was up till 2 a.m. because I got sucked in. But it was a movie called The Heavenly Kid.
Oh, yeah.
You did with Lewis Smith.
Jane Kaczmarek and Lewis Smith.
Yeah.
Jane Kaczmarek's in that?
Yeah.
And Jason Gedrick.
Yep, Jason Gedrick. And I was always a big fan of that movie. Just wanted to say that. So you did a nice little nod to James Dean there in the beginning with your outfit.
Yeah, I loved that part, getting to play James Dean, and then having the whole movie be sort of from the point of view of who's the actor who goes over the cliff, who doesn't gets his leather jacket caught on the handle and in the Rebel Without a Cause movie, and I can't remember the actor's name, but it was great to do play James Dean at the beginning with just the hair and the red jacket, and then Jane Kaczmarek as Natalie Wood, and we get married.
Yeah, and I thought it was a nice little twist there that you guys get married.
I like that movie too, and everybody always says it should have been more successful, but it came out the same year that Back to the Future did.
Yeah.
And sort of Back to the Future got all the people that wanted to see magic stuff.
Little independent movie called Back to the Future.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a gem, though. Yeah. If you guys check that out. No, and the last thing I thought we could end on was kind of an interesting story. I happened to do a little deep dive, and our mutual friend Justin talked about this a little bit. But I heard you're a big fan of the movie The Philadelphia Story, and there's a fun story there about how you watched it 4 times in a day.
Yeah, Carrie Fisher and I were good friends back in the day, right after she finished Star Wars, I think the first one or the second one, or all of them, I can't remember. We were friends for a long time. And she loved that movie, and I loved that movie, and we went to, I think, the Thalia Theater on Broadway and watched that movie. It was on a double bill. I don't even remember what the second one was, because every time we'd watch Philadelphia Story, then we go over to McGlade's Bar, which is on the corner of 69th and Amsterdam, and we'd have a couple of beers while the other movie was playing. Then we'd go back and pay our money again and go see Philadelphia. I think we saw it 4 times in one day, and we'd go back to McGlade's and drink some more and talk about the movie and do the lines. I was Jimmy Stewart, and she was Katharine Hepburn, because you have hearth fires back beneath your eye, behind your eyes, and there's something marvelous about you. I just watched that the other night. It's such a great movie.
That would have been a fun adaptation with you two.
Yeah, we had a good time. Carrie was still maybe the funniest and one of the smartest people I ever spent time in a room with.
Yeah, she seemed super witty and a great writer and performer.
Great writer, very funny, very, deeply troubled, obviously, but the best of us are deeply troubled. And, but she made work out of it. She made it work. She made, and her mom, I was just writing to somebody, a friend of mine, the other day. She and I went out to stay with her mom over Christmas once, when her mom was playing at the Sands. And we stayed, and she had a huge suite of rooms, like a whole floor or something like that. We stayed up there, and Carrie introduced me to sleazy strip bars, because that was back in
we figured we'd end the questionnaire here on maybe an easy question for you then, if you just watched Philadelphia Story. But do you remember the name of the paper that Jimmy Stewart worked for doing the investigation?
The Star Ledger is all I can remember, because that's the Newark paper, but that's not it. No, I don't remember.
It was Spy.
Spy. Oh, yes, of course it was Spy, because there was actually a magazine called Spy later in New York, and a woman I knew named, this is a good circle, Nell Scoville, wrote for Spy magazine, and she and I went out a little bit. And she ended up the showrunner, I think, on Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
There you go.
Years later.
Small world.
Yeah, small world. Full circle.
Tiny little world.
Well, Mark, we're tabulating your score here, and with all the bonus credit that you're getting for your great stories, you got 110%. So
110%. What can be better?
A++.
I would say, as an actor, I try to give 110%. Don't ask for more.
Well, we very much appreciate you spending time with us today, and we could probably talk to you for several hours, but we'll let you get back to your daily activities. But thank you so much for not only giving us some trivia about yourself and going behind the trivia with some of your classic roles, but just giving us your time and being so gracious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was fun to do. I didn't know what to expect, but it was genuinely. It was fun. I learned a few things.
Well, there you go. Now you know that Niedermeyer is servant at arms.
Yeah, exactly. He's the servant at arms. And I've been saying all my life, I'm only here to teach, to my son especially, I'm only here to teach and serve.
There you go.
And now I know that, Niedermeyer I was born to play Niedermeyer, I guess.
Is there anything you'd like to plug for listeners to check out? Or I know you said you had a film coming out?
Yeah, a film I made a couple of years ago when we made it was called Depth of Field. Now it's called The Field, directed by Tate Bunker, who's a director I've worked with twice. I made another movie you should check out and see if you can get a hold of it, called Little Red, which I think is really good and very creepy. It's the Little Red Riding Hood story, only modern, and I play the big bad wolf with a 13-year-old girl.
Scary.
There's a scene on the beach that's really, really sick. I don't know why that makes me laugh. Sick makes me laugh. But it's a good movie. It's very creepy.
Yeah, we'll make sure.
And Tate, look for it. Tate directed that, and then this movie now is called The Field. And the last I heard from him, which was a month ago, was that it was going to be out probably in theaters sometime this winter. I don't know.
Awesome.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll put a link there for everyone.
Yeah, well, thanks again, Mark, for joining us.
Yeah,
thanks to my co-hosts here in the studio, and thanks to our listeners for tuning in to episode 1 of Triviality Behind the Trivia.